So here is a person who's got incredible background, and he started this company which is in the very high end of the recruiting business. So I'm pretty sure, I can almost guarantee you, if any of you here who are to be the next executive in this country, I can guarantee you Suresh will have your name in his database. So Suresh started this company. Suresh started this company many years ago, and he's currently based out of Mumbai. He's got offices in Delhi, in Bangalore, and all that stuff. And he's also been very graceful to sponsor this conference as well. Thank you, Suresh. Take the mic and tell us about how you ended up from an engineer into a top-end recruiting company. And by the way, is my name on the list too? If not, you should enter.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's such all of us, which is the Vishweshwaraya College. I must thank BV for including me in this illustrious panel, and also for giving such a straight from the heart introduction of my background. He used the word ended up, he used the word landed in. I think that actually describes my next 5 minutes of what I wanted to tell you. I never had any intention nor any capability to be an entrepreneur of any kind, leave alone what I landed up with. I joined NITI for my post-graduation after UVCE. Like DB said in his slide about problem solving of technical kind, NITI ended up indoctrinating problem solving of management kind. The difference is here there may be a deterministic finite solution, and in management there is no deterministic finite solution. So I still am finding out my roots for the problem. So I haven't found the problem yet. But very early in life, I knew that my passion is in consulting. One of my professors, who also happens to be from Bangalore, he told me when I had got a job in Colgate-Palmolive after NITI, and I told him that this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life, hopefully, he was very happy and actually acclaimed that you're on the right path. But after a few weeks, he called me and said, can you take a hard feedback? I said, yes, you're my professor and I think I deserve a honest and a hard feedback. You're working in a toothpaste company which people will spit every morning. You'll put in the mouth and spit every morning. And you are such a great engineer and a great problem solver. Why don't you do consulting? So, but we come from such low-income background. I never ventured to get out of the structured job scenario, so I continued to work and change 2 or 3 assignments. And I realized after a handful of 8 or 9 years that all my bosses tried very hard to make my job boring. Company after company, I shifted from an FMCG company to an electric motor company to an automotive battery company, and I worked in manufacturing, sales industry.
The right set of people, which I really want to add to it, because it's not just yourself, because no one person has all the skills. You have to realize what skills you don't have, and make sure you associate with people in the company who have the complementary skills, so as a whole you are successful. And it may be that you are not the right person to run the company because you don't have the leadership skills. It's much more important to have the right person in that role than you being in that role. It's better to be a smaller portion of a larger pie than a very large portion of a tiny little pie. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind, is not focus on what your role is, focus on what your contribution is. So with that, I will stop. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, Kamla Rangnath Raghunath. very highly accomplished on the educational side as well as on the professional side, and she's grown her company significantly over the last several years, and company is called Giftlinks, which now she's transforming from from a regular business into an online kind of a business. So Kamala, you want to talk about?
I would like to thank the organizers for having given me this opportunity to be on this panel and to share my experiences as an engineer turned entrepreneur. In this day and age, I think to get a job after an engineering degree is the easiest. And to think of starting an enterprise of your own becomes too cumbersome. But I think with my experience, I feel starting, nurturing and growing a business gives you tremendous thrill and joy. And having experienced this myself for the last 25 years, I think I'll just tell you my story. In the 70s and 80s, once you finished your 12th grade, you had just two options left for you. Either you become an engineer or a doctor. Nobody asked you ever if you were inclined towards any other subject or interested in anything else. So I think engineering, it was for me. And I passed out of UVCE, like 84 batch, as Jagadeesh just said. 5 years of circuits, electronics and the like, and we were all set to face the world. A 9-to-5 job was never my cup of tea. I always thought of that. So after I finished, I said no, I would not take up a job. And I was just trying, I was a tennis player then, so I was playing the national and the international circuits. So I hardly got any time to think. But as time went on, I realized that I had to do something. And I got married, settled down, and then I realized I have to start something, otherwise people are going to point a finger at me and say, no, engineering madidale enu marta illa anta. So I said, let me start something. I was just toying with the thought when, I was sitting in my dentist's clinic one day, and I was just waiting for the dentist, and you know how it is, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. So I was watching a clock that was ticking on the wall, and I realized, this must be an easy circuit to design. And what I did was, I went back home and opened up a clock, a resistor here and a stepper motor there, and a clock was made. This, sort of was the seed for my industry. And a little bit of groundwork on the components, and I was all set to start my industry in a small room in my house, because I didn't have any business background, and my family thought, this was just whatever, flash, whatever, you're just going to try it and you're going to stop within 3 months or 6 months. So RK Industries was founded in 1986. Making clocks and watches. We initially supplied these clocks to brand names that were already popular, and they sold them under their banner. And as our industry developed, we sold them under our own brand and started exporting these clocks and watches. We were also predominantly in the gifting market, promotions and gifting market. And we realized that there was a hitch into manufacturing only one product. Because a client who bought a clock 1 year would not buy the same thing the next year. And this sort of limited our growth. Thus was found Giftlinks and
in digital communications. And today, after almost 25, 30 years of fantastic career and experience that he has, he's with Qualcomm, and once again, just like Balu, I wouldn't be surprised that some of the technologies that he has worked on and some of the technologies that he's working on is actually sitting in our pocket right now. So, Narasimha, why don't you give your background? There's also another thing that I thought I would mention. both his children have taken on classical music, Carnatic classical music. These two kids, they're very well educated in the US education system, but what they have pursued is absolutely fantastic. They both deliver Carnatic classical concerts almost at professional levels. And a lot of credit goes to the parents. And it's not easy to have your children, especially in America, to have a balance between the path that you are taking, which is on the career side, and also on the value system and the cultural aspect, which is very, very hard, because I have two sons as well, and we try to, take Narasimha, his wife, and the children as role models, and it's really fascinating to know him for the last 25, 30 years. Narasimha?
Leading management roles like VP, Chief Technical Officer, CTO, etc. in technology. And I've been involved in many startup companies. And you perhaps think, wow, I must be a very, very rich man. Well, not quite, because in the US, most of the startups don't really work. You have at least 9 failures every time startups. So that's one lesson you got to know. So instead of going through all the list, what I'll do is I'll tell you one of the successes, which was the first one that he mentioned. And in those days, the idea of making lots of money on success, in the 70s it was not quite that prevalent. In the 80s and 90s it started. So the first company, and I'll try to say also a few lessons I've learned both from the success and the failures, and then I will close my speech. So the first company that I worked for, which he mentioned, which was Granger Associates, actually happened in a way that is quite different from normal companies. Jagadeesh mentioned right at the outset, and Babu, I guess even Anil said, you first look for a problem, and then you figure out how to solve it. And then you figure out how to iterate on it so that nobody else keeps up with it. So I worked on a subject called digital signal processing, which was in its nascent period in its early days. My thesis was and really looking for an application to make a splash in this world. And nowadays everybody knows what digital signal processing is. It's starting every course, and now almost every engineer knows it. Anyway, I did my signal processing, and it was a classic case where you had a technology looking for a problem to solve. And there was a communication problem, as you mentioned, where people were still using crystal filters to build communication equipment. And the communication industry moved into a digital world with the introduction of what we call digital switches that replaced all the mechanical switches we had. And then there was this problem of interfacing a digital signal, which the switch terminates, to an analog microwave signal, which was all predominantly analog frequency division multiplex. And to solve it with the traditional technology could be done, but be expensive. And Bell Labs kind of wrote several times saying, well, this is still the best way to do it, so we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. And trying to do the nascent DSP, digital signal processing, to solve that problem is an exercise in futility, essentially. So if Bell Labs says that, and I'm not an IIT graduate, coming from UVCE, the first thing is, wow, we're not going to do this stuff. Anyway, if you do have confidence, and you don't mind being from UVCE, you can take up the task of taking up the biggest research organization in the world at that time. And I did succeed, and the company succeeded, and lots of patents came out of it, and it was a success. So the lessons you learn in here is, don't be fooled by what's written out there, unless it's theoretically. Quite often people mislead you just because they don't know how to solve it. And papers coming from leading establishments can, in fact, be misleading, and you don't want to lose confidence. And that, at at least proved that I'm not that bad a guy, even though I come from UVCE. So that's one thing. So quite although this scenario where as technology finds you have the technology and you then look for the problem doesn't happen. Most of the cases it does happen once in a while. In fact, Qualcomm is another example. CDMA is a technology that was used in military services, and nowadays all your 3G phones are CDMA. So Qualcomm solved that problem very, very. The technology actually fit the application. The second thing I wanted to say to you, so that was the success story. Worked very well, and I got patents, papers, and laurels, and so on. It was nice. So the second thing was, here is the case where there was a problem, and we had invented technology to solve it. And this was a company that Jagadeesh introduced me to. This was my second startup company. In fact, Jagadeesh also invested in this company. So this was the voice over IP technology, where it was well understood that all communications will be packet-based. We're going to transform this whole circuit switch, the telephone world, into packet switch world, and it's happening now. Several problems with that approach. Problem was there. There was a technology that was not quite yet ready for the solution. More importantly, a lot of these speakers here brought up the issues of the right people, the right team, and one thing that they forgot to mention was you should not bite more than you can chew. So this company, which is what's called Empowertel, said, we are going to build the chip for the voice over IP, we are going to build the boards, we are going to build the shells, we are going to build the racks, we are going to build the software, and we'll put AT&T out of business. And all the other telephone companies. And one other thing that I also noticed, I was VP at this company, is quite often the management concludes, and this is a lesson for all these younger entrepreneurs. I'm one of the older guys here. If you have success with one company, it automatically assumes to success with the next company you start.
Suresh, Bhagwan.
I would say success, failure, money. These are three things which on the way could be byproducts while you are wanting to do certain things, some good objectives, building up a company, building up something else, being an innovator, as he was mentioning about Apple. I would just still say is an innovator image quite a lot. So in the process you would encounter all this, and in my own venture, if I look at it, what is success, what is not success is fairly at least clear to me. Now, I did try, as Narasimha was saying, having, let's say, a degree of success in one venture, I did try another venture doing manufacturing of specialized motors. Now, I must admit that I am not still taken off and still feeling I did certain wrong steps and I need to correct it. So, failure, of course, is something which is there in every venture, and I'm sure there are many aspects of a particular success where you can definitely identify what is successful, what is failure. So, failure is something which is coming along with success. Perhaps only the success is read and seen by the others outside.
Give you an example in my own company. Yeah. We at some point, maybe about 7 years ago, we tried to venture into the retail trade, and I think we were a little ahead of time. So we went into these chains, Walmart and Marks and Spencer's across the globe, and I don't think that was a very successful venture because of the margin crunch.
How did the society treat you?
No, nobody knew about it, only I knew.
When I first announced to my family, my wife, who's also from Bengaluru, that I'm going to be on my own, I'm having a venture which is getting initial funding from the clients, she told me, just give me 20,000 rupees, I'll keep it safe. I asked her, why 20,000? She said, look, if everything fails, we at least have air tickets to go back to Bangalore from Bombay. And so the conservative attitude with which we were all brought up will ensure that no failure will really make us go belly up. We are all so risk averse in our DNA. Although today we run really 150 crore company, every day my dashboard in the evening when I go back to sleep, my first check is, have I taken advance from any client whom I have not serviced, that I'll get a hit mail in the morning tomorrow. I'll make sure that is plugged. So I think failure makes us all the time on the edge of the seat, and we will counter that almost on a real-time basis.
So your wife knew, even if you failed, you're going to... There's a microphone. So before we get the microphone, this question has been bugging me. Yeah, why don't we give that?
Definitely.
Wow, that's
You
good.
can actually photo on the web.
He has an idea.
Okay.
It's not on the web.
I have two questions.
It took me a little bit time to recognize
I have two questions for you. Number one, what is your message with the Chinese economy to the younger entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurs to come in the future? Number one. Number two, what is that one thing that you would like to connect from your entrepreneurship to UVCE?
Very good question. A very small percentage of the Indian population has actually benefited from the technology. It's the ones who are involved in the technology industry, which I think is like less than 1%. I think it's probably, even people who are influenced by that is less than 1%. So I guess my message to entrepreneurs here is to bring high volume manufacturing, because that will bring prosperity to a much broader set of people than just the top few that are benefiting today. And I'm trying to remember the second question. See, I'm losing my memory already. So I think what is the message to UVC in terms of... Okay, so I think the question is, how would I connect my entrepreneurship with UVCE? I guess... Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. The question is, what did I get from UVCE in terms of my entrepreneurship? Well, that's a tough one. I must say, I was so passionate about electronics that I really ignored my studies to a large extent, because we didn't get to electronics until the fourth year, I think. And all this physics, chemistry, and mathematics was great, but it was not something that I was interested in. It gave me a good foundation, but my passion was electronics. So I guess one lesson I learned was that even though you are passionate about something, there are other things you have to do to get there. Because without a degree, you can't get to the next level, which is, I got to the next school, which is UCLA. But certainly my own feeling is that I thought of studies as a means to an end rather than in an end in itself. Although I totally believe in learning, I think as you go along, you continuously learn. So I think what I learned was that I had to be disciplined. You can't just take your emotions and focus on something. You have to do all the other things you have to do to get going in your career.
Even this whole anagram ICE sector, which used to be information, communication, and entertainment, has now got a new flavor. It's now called infrastructure, construction, and engineering. So it's going back to manufacturing. And there was a question about Chinese manufacturing. The manufacturing sector that we address, they're all saying that integrated design and manufacturing, even Chinese have a couple of notches below what Indian companies can deliver. So even in Bangalore, of course, in the aviation sector and advanced automotive, the amount of design work which gets done here, which gets integrated into manufacturing, is mind-blowing. So there is a definite trend in executive movements as well as investments into the core manufacturing right now.
Right, he gave the example that Apple, which does close to $60-70 billion in revenues, it employs about 25,000 people in the US. For the kind of products they produce, the manufacturing that is done, US employs about 25,000 people, whereas China employs about 275,000 people. So which is, basically going back to what Balu was saying, right? This is positively impacting the lower segment of the society because that's where the volume jobs are being created. So 275,000 jobs versus 25,000 jobs, right? The ratio somehow doesn't represent well. So any other questions?
IT also reaching its peak moment. We have now come down to an arena where nanotechnology has come in. If I'm standing here, you can know anywhere from the world where I'm standing. To the extent that our privacies are getting 10 years back it was not a global power, 10 years now it is a global power. IT has been one of the main backbones of such a thing. The third thing is giving back to the UVCE from the UVCE Foundation. I would request all such entrepreneurs to form a UVCE mentoring under this UVCE Foundation so that they can also encourage some of the people from UVCE or any other friends who are also likely to get into such technology tie-ups with any of these companies and prepare them or advise them or caution them from any of the pitfalls that they might have, which you would have faced, so that we don't make the same mistakes. Thank you.
Very differentiating things in technology. I'll give you a few instances and examples. When optical networks, I don't know how many of you are involved in that technology, was initially started and invented in the industry, people said that telecommunications is a dying field. Everybody needs to run to packet-based technology. Everybody needs to run to ATM. Everybody needs to run into different types of technology. Optical networking in 1998-99 reinvented itself. Fundamentally because it provided a global connect, a global reach. For those of you who have read the book The World is Flat, Thomas Friedman makes an excellent argument as to why globalization started with the bust in technology in 1999. Purely because it made technology something which is affordable for a lot of countries. Today, if you sit in Bangalore and try to...
Well, only one thing I would like to clarify or maybe suggest to Jagadeesh and others. This kind of panel discussion is very, very essential. And I wish we should have mixed this one. Mostly all the panel members are associated with either electrical or electronics side. I wish we should have mixed with some successful stories in mechanical engineering and civil engineering too.
I agree.
The reason I say that one, I would have been one of the entrepreneurs myself. In fact, in 1985, I was working for Artesian Water Company. I was a chief engineer. I was considered to be the water resources specialist. In that order, there was a small course in New York. I live in Delaware. I traveled to New York, 3-day course, and the president of American Society of Civil Engineers. He had a good business, so he gave a course how to start a small business. So I was moonlighting myself. I wanted to be an entrepreneur in water supply, wastewater, and environment engineering. But unfortunately, I put my hand in the service area. BTL Foundation was already on several projects for both in India as well as in America and other parts of the world were on. So I am also a kind of entrepreneur in developing and providing services to
engineering or do something in computers. So basic electrical engineers for industries are not available. Mechanical engineers are not available. Power sector is suffering because of engineers, electrical engineers. So what can we do about it? Can this situation be corrected? Or we talk only of computer, only of IT, BT. What about the manufacturing sectors? In fact, we talk of China. India is suffering because of the manufacturing production here. We are not advanced in manufacturing at all. We are only talking of higher technology, which is service oriented. But manufacturing is really lacking.
So what happens to the students who get their mechanical degree or civil engineering and other kinds of degrees?
So the intake they have reduced there. People are not going in for those courses because there is more of demand in the IT sector. Basic mechanical or electrical, nobody chooses. Secondly, even if they choose, they do some short course in computer and then switch over to computers.
So if I may ask Professor Sharma, he's the head of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at UVCE, perhaps maybe to comment on his thoughts on this.
Faithfully, both for the evening college and for the day college, regularly without fail. So the students are coming into mechanical engineering and probably to the civil engineering too. Now, to answer the moot point of your question, yes, some of them are going to software because of the money and their inclination and aptitude towards the job. But a lot of them are going to Bharat Forge, they are going to Kennametal, they are going to TVS Fasteners. If the pay is right and if the environment is right, the companies pick them up. So that's all it is. Thank you very much.
It's a supply and demand.
Engineering College right now. Today I reported. I was with RVCE for a quarter century. I beg to differ with my brother alumnus, because today 80,000 civil engineers are required in the country per year. This is IIT Bombay survey. Whereas we are manufacturing 20,000 civil engineers in the country. And in fact, we are converting mechanical engineers into civil engineers forcibly. And even one of the vice presidents of the mega construction company is from computer science. We had to take. This is a very unfortunate development that we had to pick the vice president of a construction company, which is a leading construction company, which I should not mention it here, as the vice president is a graduate in computer science. It's funny. And I think as far as the people coming into the civil engineering is concerned, I am quite convinced that all colleges have started opening courses in civil engineering from last year. And there is full rush and mad rush, and 100% it is going to be filled up in all colleges in the country. I give guarantee. If this is not true, you can come and question me.
Mr. Jagadeesh, I am a 1971 graduate of mechanical engineering from UVCE. I went to USA in 1971 and started my own company in 1978 without any financial support from anybody else. One thing I had was my commitment to being on my own entrepreneur. Before I even joined engineering college, I wanted to be in my own business. So through my stay in engineering college, I stayed focused on developing my skills to be good in what I do. And I was very good in machine shop practice. So utilizing that, when I went to US, the first job that I got in a summer was as a machinist.
If I told them that I was a mechanical engineer, there was no way that I was going to get a job. Because of my skills as a machinist, I worked for 3 months in a company, and I always wanted to be in plastics. So I made sure that this was a plastics company that I went and worked for. And after my graduation, I started my own company in plastics. And today, I'm proud to say that I'm one of the leading manufacturers in my field in the world. So for anybody, it's possible as long as you're determined and you stay focused on what you want to do and you create a niche for your own product or services. And then if you can do a job better than your next door neighbor, you will definitely succeed. There is no absolute doubt about that part because I'm the living proof of that concept.
Fantastic quality of people. Between the time I passed out in 78 to the time I started an industry in 93, believe me, I felt in this country itself, you would not have the cream of the people. Majority of them go out. Then there is the financial sector which is just absorbing a lot of these fantastic engineers. And then you have got the remaining ones who choose the big companies. And when I had started like ours, we were to just be satisfied with whatever is available to us. But what we quickly learned was how to get the best out of the available people when we don't get the best people. Now,
I have 3 important things that I'd like to suggest. First, before you start anything, do your due diligence. Make sure that the company that you're trying to build is indeed necessary in the industry. Do your due diligence. Second, don't be afraid to make mistakes. All of us make mistakes. But when you make mistakes, learn from it. Third, get together with A-grade people. A-grade people will take you where you need to go. These are my 3 advices. Thank you very much.
My simple advice is that whatever was your core idea which you delivered, which you passionately pursued, which should be received by the user fraternity and you get revenue and your company gets valued higher and higher, all this is quite a dream run. So you should ensure that every second during this dream run you are putting both your foot on the throttle as well as foot on the brakes. So you have to be monitoring every second of this journey. But there is a period of 5 to 7 years by which time you will start making financial profits. If you haven't, then it's not a shame or disappointment to leave it, give it a breather and revisit this whole concept or something else. So I think 5 to 7 year window is the window you need to keep being at it.
Very good. I guess the top 3 things I would say is that you have to innovate. In fact, that's the only long-term barrier any company has. I don't care how big they are. The bigger companies can last a little longer without innovating because they have the funds. And innovation means you have to think out of the box. And when you think out of the box, you will make mistakes. And you have to get rid of your ego, that you have to be right all the time. As an engineer, you always want to support what you did, why you did what you did. But the real fact is that sometimes, what we think is the right thing to do may not turn out to be true. When you take it to the customer doesn't like it or it's not a good match. The important thing is to learn from it and say, okay, we're going to change the direction. And that's very hard to do. Even in a small company, to say that we did something wrong in terms of our strategy, now we know we have done something wrong, therefore we have to correct. And the more precise you are in doing that, the more disciplined you are, more successful you will be. But in spite of all of it, there is an element of luck. I would agree with Narsit. I think being in the right place at the right time kind of compensates for a lot of things. So that's about 50% is luck, the other 50% is hard work. Thank you.
No, you were saying something about the UVCE and IIT. You want to talk about that?
Oh, okay. So we were talking about IIT and UVCE.
That was a great thing which Bala shared. Yes, U and B. I asked Bala just before I state what I am going to say, whether with all what he said about being an entrepreneur or somebody doing a lot of experiments at home, did he start off as soon as he left his engineering college? He said, no, I did go to work. For those of us, I'm sure we are all in our family, Jagadeesh and myself, and many of us here on the table, we are first generation entrepreneurs. And unless you come from an industrial background or other industrial family background and things like that, my advice to all the youngsters would be to take up some jobs, learn. When you come out of the college, believe me, many of you do not know many things in the way in which the industry works, in the way in which a customer reacts to your product. It's always good to see how systems are in a large organization. Work for some time. As I said, I worked for 15 years in only one company. That somebody will laugh at it when I just say that today. But it did give me a lot of confidence, and also in the industry you get recognized. 15 years may be quite a lot of time, but it is best to use the experience and expertise you gain in the industry. I would say anywhere between 28 to 35 is a good age to start, which if you have ideas, perhaps share it with few trusted people. You are not going to reinvent the wheel. Believe me, every business solution or business problem is already experienced by one or the other. Share it with few of your trusted friends and people like Jagadeesh or any one of us. I'm sure somebody said we should have some entrepreneurial advisory panel or something like that. I don't mind to come and do that at any time, giving talks and things like that. Now, it's better to just share some of these aspects of what you need to do, how you need to go about, whether funding is required, how much funding is required, what is burnout and things like that. Always better to have that advice, and you will perhaps not do certain mistakes which many of the people, many of us may have done. So
start very small and grow big gradually with a lot of passion and laser focus and with a lot of courage, and lead a good team.
So my last question got into electronics, and believe me, he did quite well, very well. I don't know, he always makes a joke.
They don't understand accounts and finance. So our gentleman has already touched upon that we should understand that. So one among the partners or one among the directors, how to put extra efforts to learn the accounts and finance so that they can do better. Ultimately, without profit, no company exists. So they have to focus on the profitability. And thirdly, when you start a company, be clear of what type of company you want to start. That is, among the friends who wants to start the company, let them be clear whether it's a partnership or a private limited.
Thank you all. We only have 25 minutes before the lunch guys actually shut down.
Hold on, we have token of position to the panelists. Yeah. Thank you very much for Narasimha, Dr. Narasimha. Anil Rao. R. Suresh. Mr. Balu. Mr. Bhagwan. And Mrs. Kamala Raghunath. I have two announcements. There's a special announcement from Power Integrations. Do drop in your business cards at the Power Integrations stall number 54. There's a lucky draw at the end of the day. So lucky winner will get a branded DVD player with the chip